Noah from American Trucks here, and in front of me I have this Barricade CSD front bumper with the 20-inch dual row LED light bar for the 18 to 20 F-150, excluding the Raptor. Now this bumper is just about as low profile as you can get with an aftermarket bumper. This guy doesn't replace the whole bumper though, it just sits over top of the old one as an add-on. Plus, this one in particular has a big LED light bar that mounts to the front of it if you're looking for some compact defense as well as some utility like a light bar, then this CSD front bumper from Barricade will be a great fit for you. Like I said before, this guy just goes on top of the factory bumper, and it is really just about as low profile as you can get while still maintaining some beefy protection. Now it does look pretty awesome and adds some more aggressive styling to the truck as well. Now this add-on definitely isn't as rugged as something like a full bumper, but it will still take a beating to save your bumper and grille. And more so, I think this is going to tailor to the daily driving protection, especially if deer are all over the road where you live. Now definitely one more thing to note is that this guy looks great on a lightly modified or completely stock truck. And then really the party piece of this guy is going to be that dual row 20-inch LED light bar that mounts right here on the front. So as far as construction goes, we're looking at all steel all around, of course. Now this steel is cold formed, so the temper of the metal isn't lost when you heat the steel. Now the entire thing is also coated in a stage 2 finish with an epoxy pre-coat and then a textured black powder coat for maximum protection from rust. Now overall, it will serve its purpose to be extremely durable and protect the front end of your F-150. And then the light bar itself here has an IP67 waterproof rating, has a color temperature of 6500 Kelvin, and finally this is powder coated the same textured black as well to match the bumper for some added protection for the light bar. Coming in around 500 bucks, this is a bit more expensive than some of the other smaller bumpers or add-ons out there, but it does come with the light bar, and all in all, it's really not a price that's shocking, and it does seem to me to be a decent deal. Installing this bumper is a nice and simple job. We're looking at an install time of about 2 hours and a difficulty of 1 out of 3 wrenches. This guy isn't too terribly heavy either, so you should be able to manage getting it bolted up by yourself. But with larger pieces like this, it's always a good idea to have a friend around to help hold it. Now speaking of install, let's head over to the shop and get this guy installed on our F-150.
The tools you'll need for this project are a power ratchet, a 1/2-inch drive impact, a 3/8 drive impact, and or a 1/2-inch, 3/8 and 1/4-inch drive ratchets, a 10mm socket, a 15 and an 18mm short socket, 15, 18, and 21mm deep sockets, an 18mm swivel, a pair of snips, a 1/2-inch drive wrench, a 16mm wrench, a couple of different trim removal tools, and a 3/8 drive extension. Hi everyone. Today we're installing a front bumper overlay on our F-150, so let's get started. All right, if by chance you live in a state that requires a front license plate, first thing you're going to want to do is remove the license plate and the bracket from the front of your bumper. Now, where we live, we don't require a front license plate, so we're going to skip that step, obviously, and just get right to the install. First thing we're going to need to do is remove these 2 bumper pads here and here. And to do that, we're going to use a trim removal tool to just pop those out. To remove those, you're going to take your trim removal tool and just put it in on the edge here and just pry it away, and it comes right off. And we'll do the same thing for the other side. Now you can do this whole project on the ground. We've got ours on a lift just to be able to show you some of the steps and some of the things that are behind the front bumper that we can't show you if we've got the vehicle on the ground. So first thing we're going to do after we get these covers removed is remove these 2 21mm bolts here and here on the driver's side. So we're going to use our 21mm socket to get those off. And once you've got the 2 nuts off of the front, You're just going to reach up behind the bumper here and pull this plate out. Then we're going to replace it with the supplied plate with longer bolts on there. Now once you've got the plate in place, we're going to use these two plastic retainers and just screw them on to the bolts just to hold that in place while we finish the rest of the install on this side. We're going to put a couple of these spacers on the front of those bolts so that we can mount the bumper to it. We slide our spacers onto the bolts. And now we can mount our front bracket. Now our front bracket, they are side specific, so you need to make sure when you install this that the short L part of the bracket is on the top and the vertical bracket is closer to the inside of the truck. Now we slide the front bracket over the bolts. Now with the bracket in place, we're just going to go ahead and put in our large flat washer on the bolt, and then a lock washer and the 12mm nut. Now we're not going to tighten these down just yet because we've still got the other side to do. Just make sure that they're finger tight so that it doesn't fall off when we move to the other side. And now you can repeat that whole process for the other side. Now with our front mounting brackets installed, we're going to go ahead and use our 18mm socket and just snug them up enough to make sure that it's not going to fall off. And make sure you repeat that for the other side as well. All right, now we're ready to install the lower support brackets for our bumper. And they're going to go between our tow hook and the bottom of the frame. So to do that, we're going to have to remove this front bolt here on the tow hook and just loosen up the rear one. And then we'll slide this in, reinstall the original bolt underneath this, and our support bracket will be installed. If you don't have tow hooks on your vehicle, the kit does come with these double nut plates that you can insert inside the frame, and you'll also have to cut out a section of your lower splash guard. All the instructions for that are included in the kit, but since ours has tow hooks, we're not going to have to do that. So we're just going to remove this front bolt here of the tow hook and loosen the rear one using a 15mm socket. Now you won't be able to use your impact gun behind here because of this splash guard, so we're just going to use a regular 1/2" drive socket and ratchet. Now we can go ahead and slide our support bracket in, making sure that when you slide it in, the welded on nuts are facing upwards. And we'll slide that in between the tow hook and the frame, and making sure that the slot on the support bracket goes around the bolt that we left inside. Now we can go ahead and reinsert our front bolt on the tow hook right back where it was at. Keep in mind that it is possible that when you loosen that back bolt that the double nut plate may have shifted. So you may have to just put that back in place so that it's lined up so that we can go ahead and insert our bolt. Now we're just going to leave that finger tight right now until we actually get the bumper installed. But you can repeat this process for the other side. Now we're ready to go ahead and install our license plate bracket. Now like I said, our truck doesn't require a front license plate, but we're going to show you how to install it anyway. We're going to use 2 of these 6mm button head bolts with a lock washer and a flat washer on the front side. We're just going to insert it into the hole, into the round hole, and then put it onto the bumper. Then we're going to use a flat washer and a nylock nut on the back side to hold it in place. And then just do the same thing on the other side. And like I said, a flat washer on the back side and one of the supplied nylock nuts. And once you've got those in, they do supply you with an Allen wrench. So you can go ahead and put the Allen wrench on there and then use a 10mm socket to tighten up the nut on the back side. And then we'll just make sure that the other one is tight as well. Now we can install our trim that goes on the edge of the bumper to protect the factory bumper from being damaged. And to do that, we're just going to start at the bottom and just push the trim onto the bumper. We'll do the same thing for the other side. Like I said, the process is the same. We're just going to push it on until it stops. Now, once you got it on, like I said, it's a little long on both ends. So we'll just go ahead and use a pair of snips and cut the end off. Now we're ready to go ahead and install it on our truck. Now we're actually ready to install the bumper onto the vehicle. And to do that, I've got my friend Alex here to help hold it up in place because it's a little awkward to try and get these brackets in behind the bumper and get the nuts put on as well. So to install this, these brackets that are on the back of the bumper have to go on the inside of the ones that we've already mounted on the truck. So I'm going to have Alex hold this up in place while I put these double bolt plates through the brackets. So in case you missed it earlier when we installed the double bolt L brackets to get the bumper onto the vehicle, we used a flat washer, a lock washer, and a nut to secure it to the bracket that we already installed. So now we're going to go ahead and do the same thing with a lower bolt. Put on our flat washer, our lock washer, and then our nut. Now we're not tightening these down just yet because we want to get everything assembled and then we'll do the adjustments later. So now that we've got the driver's side done, we can go ahead and do the same thing for the passenger side. Now we can go ahead and connect our bumper to the support bracket that we installed earlier next to the tow hook. To do that, we're going to use a 6mm bolt along with a flat washer and a lock washer and the supplied Allen key. So we're just going to line these holes up on the bracket. And go ahead and insert our bolt. Now there's 2 on the driver's side and 2 on the passenger side. So we'll go ahead and finish up the driver's side right now. And again, we're not tightening these down all the way until everything is connected. Now we'll do the same thing for the passenger side. Now that we've got everything connected, granted it is loosely attached right now, but at least everything is connected. Now we can go ahead and start tightening everything down. To do this, we're actually going to need an extension and an 18mm swivel socket in order to reach the nuts on the 2 bolts that we attach the bracket to the truck. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put this on the bolt, on the nut first. Then we'll raise the bumper up to where it's supposed to be, and then we'll tighten it down. We're starting on the driver's side. Now, because of the design of this bumper, it is a little difficult to get to these nuts and bolts. So it's nearly impossible to get the camera in here so you can see it. But the bolt is right up inside here in the corner, which is why I say you need the 18 millimeter swivel socket. So we'll go ahead and put that on. We're going to raise our bumper up to where it needs to be. And then tighten that bolt down. And we'll do the same thing on the passenger side. Raise your bumper up, use your swivel socket, and go ahead and tighten that one up. And then once you get those 2 done, then you're going to need a regular ratchet and a short socket to get to the other bolt. All right, so now that we've got our driver's side snugged up pretty well, we do the same thing on the passenger side. Again, you're going to need your extension and a swivel socket. Once you get those done, then you can tighten up the other nut. In order to do that, you're going to have to go behind the bumper with a regular ratchet and a short socket. And we'll show you that part in just a second. All right, the second nut that we need to tighten up is attached to this bolt right here. Now, it's very difficult to get the camera in here to show you the actual nut itself, but this gives you an idea of where we're located on the truck. So with our regular ratchet and a short 18 millimeter socket, we can go ahead and tighten this up. And now we'll do the same thing for the passenger side. Now, the bracket on the passenger side is located in the same position on the frame as what the driver's side is. So you shouldn't have any problem finding it and getting your ratchet on there and getting it tightened down. Now that our main bracket is secured to the frame, now we can go ahead and tighten up the nuts to where our bumper overlay attaches to the support brackets that we installed earlier. So to do that, we're just going to make sure that it lines up correctly on the bumper, and using a 16 millimeter wrench. And at this point, a ratchet wrench, if you've got it, will be really handy. So now that our main bracket is tightened to the frame, now we can tighten up the bolts where the bumper overlay attaches to the support brackets. To do that, you're going to need a 16 millimeter wrench, preferably a ratchet wrench because it's very tight to get in here. A ratchet wrench will make your life so much easier. So we'll go ahead and make sure that our bumper is lined up correctly, and then just tighten down the bolt. Once you've got that one done, then you can move on to the upper bolt. And then do the same procedure for the passenger side. Now, using the supplied Allen wrench, we'll go ahead and tighten up the 2 button bolts on the driver's side on the support bracket. And do the same thing for the passenger side. Now, with those tightened up, we can go ahead and tighten up our tow hook bolts using our 15 millimeter socket. Now remember, to tighten up this back bolt, you're going to need to use a regular ratchet and a short 15 millimeter socket. And you're going to have to access it from the back side. And now do the same thing for the passenger side. Now, with all of our brackets tightened down, we can go ahead and install our mesh covers on the front of the bumper using the supplied 6mm bolts and the Allen head wrench. And repeat that process for the other side. Now we can go ahead and install our light bar brackets. To do that, there's a hole at the bottom of this upper loop right here, and we're going to use the supplied stainless steel bolts, put it through the hole, put the bracket on it, a flat washer, a lock washer, and the supplied stainless steel nut. Now once again, we're not going to tighten that down completely yet until we get the other side installed and we get our light bar in it as well. So with that being said, we go ahead and install the bracket for the light bar on the passenger side. With our light bar brackets installed, we can go ahead and mount our double row 20-inch light bar. Now this bumper will accommodate 20 to 24-inch light, so if you have a longer light bar than this, you'll just want to flip the light bar brackets around for the longer bar. So to install these, we're going to use the two short stainless steel bolts with a lock washer and a flat washer on it, and we're just going to put them in through the slots on the end of the light bar. Now we're not going to tighten these down yet until after we get all of our wire connections hooked up, just to make sure that we can adjust the light the way it should be. Now with our light bar semi in place, we can go ahead and run the end of our cable for the light bar through the grill, and then we'll go ahead and make the connections to the rest of the harness from there. So we're just going to insert it in one of the holes in the bottom of the grill here, just to keep it out of the way. Now to give us access to the light bar connector that we just ran through the bottom of the grill, we're going to have to remove this top cover here by removing the 14 push pins along the top of this, so we can pull this out of the way and have access to the connector. We just slip our trim removal tool underneath the top of it and lift up. And with the push pins removed, we just have to lift this up and pull it out. Now we're ready to run our wiring harness. Now as you can see, we've got a red and a black wire that'll connect directly to the positive and negative terminals of the battery. It also has an inline 30 amp fuse and a relay. Along with that, we have the connector for the light bar itself, and we have the switch to operate the lights. So for now, we're just going to put the relay and the power connectors, just set it next to your battery. We're not going to hook those up just yet. We're going to get all the rest of the wiring run first. Now you can take your light bar connector and just run it along the top of the radiator core support here, and then slip it down inside between the grill and the radiator itself, like so. And once you've got that inside, we'll have to take off the 4 bolts that hold the top of the grill down so that we can reach down inside and actually make that connection. So let's go ahead and get that done now. So we'll remove these 4 bolts using our 10mm socket. Now we don't actually have to remove the grill, we just need to be able to move it a little bit out so that we can reach down behind the grill and grab our wiring harness connector and our light bar connector. We'll just clip those 2 together. Now you can wrap up the rest of this wiring harness that's in here and secure it to the wiring harness that's below just to keep it from interfering with anything. We're not going to worry about that right now since this is just a demonstration anyway. Now we can go ahead and run the harness for our light switch. All right, now that we've got our light bar hooked up to our harness, we can go ahead and run the power switch for the light. Now to do this, we're going to run it all the way to the other side of the truck. So we're going to go back behind this wiring harness here, along the top of the firewall, and over the master cylinder, and then down to the grommet that's in the firewall over on that side. So we'll go ahead and just slip this through behind the factory harness here. Now the system does come with some provided zip ties, so we'll go ahead and use one of those now and just zip tie this end of the harness up just to make sure that it's out of the way and it doesn't cause any interference with anything and it stays away from any kind of heat source. All right, now that we've got that part secured, now we can go ahead and move over to the other side of the firewall and start working over there. Now we'll go ahead and place another zip tie on this grounding block here. Again, this is just to keep the harness away from any kind of heat source or any mechanical runnings that may be going on inside, just to protect everything. And we'll go ahead and run the rest of this. We're going to connect another one to this tab right on top above the master cylinder here. Now we're ready to run the switch through the firewall. To do that, we're going to access a large grommet that's in the firewall down near the steering column. And we're going to put a hole through that grommet so that we can run the switch. So we'll show you where that grommet is right now and give you an idea of what we're talking about. All right, the grommet that we're talking about is right here on the firewall, just behind and below the master cylinder power booster. There's a couple of different ways that you can actually do this. You can cut a slice right here at the top of this, or you can cut a slice on the side of this. Either way, you're going to have to put some sort of sealant over it once you get the harness run through. Now for our purposes, since we're not making this a permanent change, what we're going to do is we're just going to pull this grommet out and we'll run the switch inside just to show you approximately where it's going to sit and that it can be done. So we'll go ahead and reach in and just pull this grommet out of the firewall. Now you should be able to see that there's a fairly large hole in there, and there's nothing in it except for what goes through the very center, which is the wiring harness. So we're just going to take our switch and run it behind the grommet. And then we'll show you where we're going to mount it in the vehicle. Now that we've got our switch run through the firewall, we're going to route this up behind this trim panel here on the dash, and we're going to mount it right up here on top of this trim panel right here. And pull it through right here in the corner next to the steering column. Now we're going to go ahead and mount our switch at the top of this trim panel here. And to do that, before you mount it, you're going to want to use a clean cloth and some rubbing alcohol just to clean the top of this off to make sure that the backing on the back of the switch will hold securely. So let's go ahead and get that taken care of now. All right, so just use a little bit of alcohol and just clean the top surface of this trim panel here next to the steering column. And once you've got that cleaned off, you can just go ahead and peel the backing. So now we just peel the backing off the back of the switch and press it into place. Now, once you've got the switch mounted, you're going to want to go ahead and get back underneath the dash and just make sure that that wiring harness is zip tied up out of the way so it doesn't cause any interference with any moving parts or any heat sources or anything like that. Now we'll go ahead and get the actual power supplied to the harness itself. All right, now we can go ahead and hook up our red and black wires to the battery. To do that, we're going to remove this nut here and this nut here on the negative terminal and put our wire underneath it and put our nuts back on. So we're going to use our 10mm socket to remove this nut. Put our red connector over that terminal and then put the nut back on. Now we'll do the same thing for the negative terminal. We'll hook up our black wire here, put the nut back on, and tighten it down. Now that we've got it all hooked up and verified that the light actually works, we can go ahead and adjust the angle of the light and tighten it down using these 2 bolts at the ends of our light bar and a 1/2-inch wrench. Now you want to make sure that you get this adjusted correctly so that you're not blinding any other drivers on the road at night and that you can still see what you need to see. So we're just going to go ahead and tighten this down now. Do the same thing for the other side. And now we can go ahead and secure our grill again and put our radiator cover back on. All right, now we can go ahead and secure our grill using the original hardware. And we'll tighten them all down with our 10mm socket. Now we'll go ahead and put our radiator cover back on and be finished with our job. All right, so we'll just slide our cover back in. Make sure all the holes are lined up and just reinsert our push pins that we used to uninstall it. And that wraps up our review and install of the Barricade CSD front bumper with 20-inch dual-row LED light bar for the 18 to 20 F-150 excluding Raptor. Thanks for watching, and remember, for all things F-150, keep it right here at AmericanTrucks.com.